saved the squirrel. Krypto was just kind of watching Superman drown. I'm not advocating for babies getting hurt, okay? But in this case, maybe. So last week I saw James Gunn's Superman at an early screening. Now that it's been a week, I've been able to formulate my thoughts. Now I remember where I was when it was announced that James Gunn was going to be the new CEO. I also remember a week later, or a few days later, when it was announced that Henry Cavill was out. Now both of those places were my living room. Now I was kind of bummed, because I kind of like Henry Cavill, and I wanted him to have an opportunity to play a more cheerful Superman. I thought James Gunn was perfect for that, but time goes on. And I remember where I was when David Cornsweet and Rachel Brosnahan were announced as Superman and Lois. I also remember where I was when the first trailer dropped. Both of those places were at work. And I saw the leaked set photos, and I saw the trailer, and my opinions were going up and down as to what I was expecting, at least in terms of quality. Now that it's finally here, I've been able to see it, experience it, and now formulate my opinions. So to start off, we will talk about the good things, the middle-of-the-road things, and then the bad things. So one thing I liked the most was Superman and Lois and just their overall relationship. Superman is so earnest, honest, and just like all around a good person. And honestly, he's kind of everything I want from a live-action Superman. He's probably the best movie version we've had in quite a while. And one obvious scene to point this all out was when he saved the squirrel. That was one of my favorite moments of like the entire film. Just because it's so like silly, but also like it just kind of shows who he is as a person and what his priorities are. And even in that scene, he went to like euthanize the monster painlessly, which is like probably hard to do, but it's, you know, it's a want that he had. And it kind of just shows like what he thinks about, what he tries to do, versus what he can't always do. Then there's like the conflict about his parents, like his biological parents. I'm kind of mixed on how that affects the overall like lore and stuff. I'm assuming they're probably not going to touch Zod for a while, just because he was in The Flash and Man of Steel. So I'm assuming they don't want to like really go in depth with that, meaning that this isn't really a big deal, at least in my opinion. It seems like they wanted to go like the Viltrumite way, where it's just like you know, gain their worship, put them into complacency, and kind of take over from there. So it wasn't like as evil as Zod, who wanted to just like wipe out everybody. And I'm kind of more okay with them leaning to his human side rather than his Kryptonian side. Then there's like Lois. They have a great back and forth. They challenge each other. I love their interview. Then when they talk up in front of like the like interdimensional monster, she talks about how how different they are. She doesn't trust anybody, and when he looks at people, all he sees is how beautiful they are, and like the camera's on Lois. And I mean, that's all obviously very intentional. Then there's like the whole conflict with her feelings and her attachment issues, and she kind of realizes that's kind of like a silly way of thinking and just kind of leans into her feelings and chooses to stay with Clark. Then there's Lex Luthor. I think his acting is phenomenal, and he's kind of like the plot driver of this film. It slowly unravels. First it's like, oh, he just wants to sell more weapons. But then it's like, oh, he wants to like own the land. And why does he want to own the land? Well, he wants to become king, but also there's petroleum deposits and things of that nature. And then it's like, no, that's just kind of more of an excuse to like kill Superman, which kind of leads me into like my point with Lex is I feel like his motivation is kind of thin. I know there's a couple lines that kind of explain it. There's the envy line where envy drives him, and in the Fortress of Solitude he talks about how Superman's become the epicenter of the entire human conversation just because he's shut up and he's strong and things like that. Even though that is motivation, I do want a little bit more. I want there to be something that Superman did that like directly affected Lex, other than just simple jealousy. There's a good setup and payoff with Lex. Kind of he like sets up when he's talking with the government. One of the government people is like, well, there's optics, Superman's too popular to rein in. And then Lex is like, well, he's less popular every day according to people online. And then later we see that Lex is kind of behind all that. I kind of like that. Then there's the brain versus brawn stuff. I know people kind of criticize that because it's like, is when he's talking about that, Ultraman is like punching Superman over and over again. And it's like, well, that's kind of brawn. But the way I view it is that Ultraman is a clone made of Lex. So already that's like a lot of brain. And then the only reason why he's punching him is because because Lex memorized 2,500 sequences or whatever, and memorized all of them and can use them to their full capacity. So I don't hate that line just because it is in my opinion, more brain than brawn, even though it is a little bit of both. Then people talk about why didn't Lex kill Superman in the prison, even though there is a line that says that he wants to keep him alive because the government has questions or whatever. And some people are like, well, why didn't he make it look like an accident? Why didn't he just kill it right then and there? I'm okay enough with the government explanation. I feel like Lex himself even wants some questions answered. But we never really find out what his questions are. Not a lot of them anyways, because we only see him ask one or two. I feel like it would make sense for Lex to ask more questions. Be like, alright, are there more Kryptonians? Are you really the last one? Just to see what other dangers he could impose. Again, that's more just made up in my head, as we don't really know what questions he was going to ask. So next thing I liked is I really liked the action. I think the action overall is very cool. I liked it when he was fighting the monster one-on-one and he was going through the flames. I liked it when he fought Ultraman, and I liked how he beat Ultraman. When he kind of dislocated his shoulder and threw him on the incoming building. I liked that. I feel like the action was very hard-hitting, at least in the theater. You felt it. I'm not sure how it's going to feel when you're at home watching this on a streaming service. But at least in the theater, most of the punches felt like they landed pretty hard. I love the music too. I love the OSTs, even though the main Superman theme is maybe a bit overused, maybe one too many times. But that's kind of more of a nitpick. I love Punk Rockers, the ending song. I love 5 Years Time, the song that played during Mr. Terrific scene. I quickly want to talk about my three favorite moments. My three favorite moments being one when he saved the squirrel, two, the ending scene with the parents, just because that shows kind of his growth. He's focusing more on the parents that raised him rather than his biological parents, and there's kind of a tug between that throughout the movie. And I really like the scene where Superman realizes that Lois Lane saved him and went in the portal and stuff. That was very nice, very touching, and I feel like it just helped them grow their bond even more. And then one other thing is the title crawl. I think it's interesting. I don't know how to feel about it because it got me asking questions what happened 300 years ago? Who was the first metahuman? What has Superman been doing really in these 3 years? I kind of wanted to learn more about the history, but also kind of feeling those questions might never get answered. I feel 300 is kind of specific, so I feel maybe the origin of metahumans will be talked about at some point, but maybe not. Alright, now things I am more neutral about. Krypto the Superdog. There's some nice scenes the setup and payoff with Mr. Terrific's cameras and Lex Luthor's cameras, or their drones or whatever, playing fetch and stuff. But then there's also scenes with Lex Luthor at the end, where I'm alright, was that really necessary? I feel he was played up a little too much, when they were in the Proton River. It's Krypto was just kind of watching Superman drown. Overall, I thought he was cute, but I don't know, I didn't really feel much one way or the other. Then there's the side characters, which I'm also mixed on, because some of them I really like Pa and Ma Kent. I like Pa's conversation about how what Superman thought about the message says a lot more about who he is as a person than what the message actually is. And then, of course, their whole conversation. I like Ma Kent. Even though those two characters are just kind of caricatures, they don't really have a lot of character. They kind of don't really have a lot of depth. Same thing with other side characters like Kat, Grant, and the other people at the Daily Planet. They added nothing to the story. And kind of over the top. And also, Lex Luthor's girlfriend was her name Tess Mercer. She was kind of over the top. She played a role in the plot, which I liked. But overall, her comedy scenes, I felt they were played for comedy. I didn't really laugh at her ever. I don't think anyone in the theater did. And I just felt they were a little cartoony for my taste. I kind of mixed on the damages at the end of the movie being reversed. Because it's not really reversed. The buildings are still split in half. The apartments are all destroyed. Plumbing is probably gone, right? General electricity is probably out for most of the city, but Mr. Terrific could probably fix all that pretty easily. Even so, I don't know how I feel about the city tearing itself apart and putting itself back together. It's not a big deal, but I was just iffy on it. And the overall thing was very sci-fi heavy, and I like that. I don't know if the hypno glasses really mattered, because I feel Clark was different enough from Superman. The Proton River I didn't really like. The interdimensional stuff I liked in concept, because it's because I think it's cool that Lex Luthor could have this whole space where he can make private prisons and labs and whatever else. But I'm not sure if I like the execution of it. Like, the pocket dimension was very, like, dark and kind of stilted when it comes to, like, any cinematography stuff. But I guess I did make the scene where Metamorphose and when the sun better. I don't know. And I think this one will be a hot take. I think the Molly scene was forced. He, like, comes in and he's like, oh, I'm gonna help you, Superman. But he doesn't really help him. He also, like, steps on his leg at one point, you can kind of tell. And then when Superman is up and he's, like, tumbling over on the side in front of the citizens, I feel like Molly is also, like, almost on top of him in, like, one weird shot. This scene needed another draft or two before it really came together. I didn't really like any of the dialogue. I thought it was just over the top. And there was a payoff with Molly later, but overall I was like, it didn't really work for me. Another thing I'm neutral on is the Justice Gang. I feel like Mr. Terrific was pretty cool for the most part. Green Lantern, I'm neutral on. I thought some of the scenes were funny, some of the scenes were a little silly. There was also, like, clearly a green screen in strings when he, like, comes in that made-up country to, like, save the boy. It's like, alright, I can see the strings, I can see the CGI, whatever. But he was better than the last Green Lantern, and I hope Green Lantern gets some more love. You know, I like Green Lantern, and I know there's a TV show coming out soon. But overall, Hawk Girl, I didn't like her screams in the theater. They were a little too loud, and I feel like at home it'll be more manageable. But, like, why is she screaming like that? I mean, I know she's a hawk, right? Kind of. But it seemed a little, again, over the top or a little silly for my taste. And then what she does at the end, where she kills a political leader, it's like, is she allowed to do that? I mean, I know at that point the news is out that Lex and him colluded, so it's like, alright, he's probably gonna go to prison, but are people, like, okay with her killing him? Like, are there gonna be repercussions for that? The answer is probably no. But do there need to be repercussions for that? I would like a line of dialogue at least, but we probably won't get that. Then there's Metamorpho. I didn't really like him all that much. His crying seemed a little too fake. And then also, why didn't he, like, save Superman sooner? From how I remember the scene, he was torturing Superman for, like, a day or, like, a night, at least a few hours. Because Superman looked really bad from the scene where Lex left to where we see him next. And it's like, okay, so he's been doing this for some time. Why doesn't he just stop? And you might be like, well, he's being blackmailed because of the baby. But he's not really being blackmailed, because the guy's just holding the baby. He's not doing anything to the baby. And the baby's within reach. I would assume that if Metamorpho did something out of line, the baby would get hurt in some way. I'm not advocating for babies getting hurt, okay? But in this case, maybe. Because it's like, alright, so Metamorpho stops the kryptonite. All the people around him start screaming, which is one thing I don't like, which we will get to in the part that I don't like. But Metamorpho stops the kryptonite. He summons the sun, and then Superman gets up and punches the glass, and the guy doesn't do anything to the baby. It's like, are you there to, like, blackmail the guy? Seems like the guy, Metamorpho, is just doing whatever he wants anyway. So it's like, why is the blackmail even a thing? I feel like the reason why the baby was even a part of the movie was so you could get a fight scene where Superman was holding a baby in one hand and punching people in the other, also trying to swim, and just being overall nerfed. And I guess it's a cool idea, but again, I don't think the execution is very well done. And I'm kind of mixed on the visuals. There are some good shots, like the scene I talked about earlier with Lois, or the scene where Superman rises from the rubble. But a lot of the shots, like the Proton River, as I brought up, or anything in the pocket dimension, and some of the fighting visuals were just kind of whatever. And I know that the camera was focused on Superman flying a lot. There's a lot of close-up shots, but I still would have liked it because this movie is about hope. The tagline for the movie is "Look Up." We never had a look up because the camera was always right there, and I wish we saw more shots of people, like, observing Superman flying. And there was, like, that one scene where he rises from the rubble. I wish we kind of got a little bit more of that, where it's like, alright, Superman is something to aspire to. He's, like, above us, but that doesn't mean he's unreachable. But overall, I feel like I'm just kind of mixed on it. Like, it's better than The Flash, which is a low bar. But I feel like it's, you know, they're making some improvements, so hopefully they continue to make improvements. Now I'll be talking about the things I did not like. So, for one thing, the camera panned to Ultraman's chest a lot. At least 2 or 3 times. And I'm like, why? Why? Was it to, like, build up to the reveal that he wasn't, like, somebody else? Like, because I thought, like, there would be, like, kryptonite in there, and it might be, like, Metallo or something. I mean, I figured it was, like, a Superman's clone because of the Fortress of Solitude stuff. I was like, why is there like a bomb in his chest? Like, what's going on with his chest? And then like nothing ever happens. In the beginning of the movie, Superman loses for the first time, and we never see how he feels about it. I feel like if you are winning fights for 3 years straight, and then all of a sudden you lose, there should be some self-reflection or like some comments about how he feels about losing for the first time. Because he's like basically a god on this planet, and it's like, oh, I just lost a fight. That should be like a big deal, but it's never talked about and it's never explored. Then I feel like there was some like fetish stuff in here. I don't know, like the harem stuff was really, really weird. And the muted toes stuff with Tessa was also kind of weird, but less weird because that was more of a joke. I think the harem stuff was also supposed to be a joke. But like Lex Luthor talks about the harem, Green Lantern talks about the harem, the political guy talks about the harem. I'm like, why are we saying harem so much? I mean, I get why. I felt like it was a little weird to like focus on that so much. Then, as I brought up before, the prisoners had terrible acting. Oh my god. When Metamorpho stops, like, the kryptonite, like, the people are, like, yelling, the guy's, like, stop. The guy to, like, the left is, like, stomping his foot, and, like, he's very, like, robotic, almost, like, theatrical. And it's, like, why is it so over the top? Like, I hate this so much. It's so dumb. It's a nitpick because it's, like, 5 seconds. But, like, I was trying to, like, focus on him, the guy making the sun. But instead I was focused on these bad actors to the left and right of Superman. Then, there's a lot of undercutting for emotional moments, I feel like. I don't feel like it's as bad as some of his previous films, like the Suicide Squad or Guardians 3. But, I hated the scene with Krypto and Lex. Because, like, Superman gives a very good monologue. And Lex is about to retaliate. And then Krypto just throws him around. And then Lex gets up, and they just have a stare down, and Lex is in prison. And it's like, I hated that. I wanted Lex to, like, rebuttal and say something and have them have a back and forth, because they never really have a back and forth throughout the movie. I mean, they kind of do, but it's never anything substantial. Then there's exposition. The exposition in the beginning of the movie is horrible. One Lex employee is talking to another Lex employee, being like, oh, yeah, Lex, he knows what he's doing, you know, he made 2,500 combinations to prepare for this fight. No one knows Superman like Lex. And it's like, bro, the employee knows that. Like, you both know the same thing. Like, why are you saying this? Or when the nanite girl is explaining to Lex her motivations in the Fortress of Solitude, she's like, Lex, I gave up my humanity to fight Superman or whatever, to kill Superman. And it's like, yeah, Lex knows that because he made you do that, you know? Or my favorite one is where Superman's in the pocket dimension and he has to yell, black hole! And it's like, bro, we know that's a black hole. Like, you don't have to say that. Lois also had a couple lines of exposition, especially towards the end, where she's like, oh, this part of the city is evacuated. Oh no, that part of the city is not evacuated. And it's like, yeah, we can probably like tell if the city's not evacuated if there are people there. And the next shot, we saw people there about to get hit by like the separation. So there was some stuff that I was like, dialed down the exposition a little bit. Then there was the issue with timing. Lex goes into the Fortress of Solitude. Then he's like, oh yeah, we have a distraction. Well, that scene is juxtaposed with the scene with like the baby monster. So it seemed like those two scenes were happening at the same time. And then the monster fights Superman the next day. When the monster dies, the interview with Lex is shown on TV. And it's like, okay, so he went from the Fortress of Solitude to an interview. All the while, Superman was fighting the monster. But the monster was supposed to be the distraction for the Fortress of Solitude, not for Lex doing an interview. Because why would Superman stop Lex from doing an interview? That makes no sense. But you would stop Lex from entering the Fortress of Solitude, so you needed a distraction. But the distraction happened the next day. So that doesn't make any sense to me. The timing is just a little off. But overall, I feel like this movie set up a decent universe. So like a lived-in universe. And of course, it sets up the Supergirl movie next year. And the Lanterns TV show is happening. I guess we're getting a Clayface movie that just seems like The Substance, but repackaged. I'll still watch it probably. Then there's Brave and the Bold, which maybe will be a Bat Family-focused movie. Overall, I'm still very optimistic about this universe, and I want to see it more explored. I know there's a rumor that Darren Aronofsky is making a Plastic Man movie. Sure, I would like movies focused more on like Flash and Wonder Woman and Green Lantern and Martian Manhunter and like the main characters first, but it seems like there's going to be a mix of random characters and characters like Superman, Batman, and stuff, which could be okay. We'll see. So tell me what you thought of Superman, because again, I have things I liked, things I was okay with, and things I didn't like. So what did you think? Do you disagree with any of my statements? Did I get anything blatantly wrong? Let me know in the comments down below.